Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. As usual, I'm just going to pause for a moment while we make sure everybody is getting logged in. Um, Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to today's webinar. This is Savannah's newest webinar on what's new in houseplants, and I was just overlooking the list, and it's fun. I'm excited. There's so many houseplants. It's always fun. All right. So for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, just a couple of notes for you. This is a webinar style class, so it's not a meeting. If you have questions during the class, you will open up your Q&A box, which is on your Zoom menu. Type your questions there, and Savannah will be taking questions periodically during the class. We are recording, and so we will have a copy of this recording available usually around lunchtime the following day. So about probably noon tomorrow, it should be available, and we'll be sending out a copy with an email with a link to the recording and a coupon for you all tomorrow as well around lunchtime. If you all have any technical issues during the class, please feel free to send me a chat or send me an email. I do monitor email just a little bit more sporadically, and I would be happy to assist you. I think that is it for me. So for those of you who haven't met Savannah yet, Savannah works at our greenhouse at the Fair Oaks store, and she's the buyer of our plants. And so she's been having a great time. We've been having a great time with her, bringing in some really exciting new and interesting varieties of plants. So she's been showcasing these for us over the last few months, and we'll be doing so again today. So I'll be sending out the plant names of the plants that she discusses. I have the spellings. She sent them to me to make sure I have them correct. So I'll be sending those out in the chat. And with that, Savannah, I will let you take over.
Okay. So I'm going to get right into it because I have a really long list today. I'm going to start with, I think I'm actually going to start, we were talking right before this about the Tillandsia, and it got me excited to talk about them. So I'm just going to start with those. I have 4 Tillandsia species to talk about today. And if you've been to one of these before, you know that I really like bromeliads. And I really like Tillandsia because they are very, very similar in appearance. So I think it's kind of cool. So here today, I have Tillandsia opinata, which is ginormous. I actually really love this guy. I was really happy that we were able to get it in. Then I have Capitata peach, which has a natural coloration on it, like a little bit of a pinkish reddish tone on the tips. I know sometimes Tillandsia have a reputation for having like spray paint on them, but there's actually a lot of species that have a natural coloration. It's usually going to be like red or yellow. The Capitata species do, and then the Ionantha does as well. They've got a lot of nice color on those. This one is Caput chiapensis, and it's actually about to flower, which is really, really cool. And then we've got Flexuosa vivipara, and we should have all these names coming in the chat. But if not, we can send them out later, perhaps. But this
We'll be there in a second. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear what you said. But this one's got a really nice coloration on the leaves as well. It's like speckly. It's like purplish and speckly. It's really, really cute in person. So all Tillandsia are going to take like very similar care. First of all, what you should notice is that all Tillandsia will have either no roots at all or like just like a little clump of roots on the ends. And the reason for that is because Tillandsia, their common name is air plants, right? And the reason for that is because they actually don't grow in soil at all. They grow on trees, sometimes on rocks. Their main purpose for their roots is to grab onto and hold onto whatever they're living off of. So if you're familiar with like Spanish moss, they'll grab onto trees. These guys will grab onto like tree branches, rock, like crevices, stuff like that. Their roots are not made for taking up water or nutrients. They've actually got specialized cells like all over their leaves. And you can kind of see that because all of them have got kind of like a silverish tone to them. When they're watered, you want to take them and like put them in like a cup of water. These big ones you could like run under a faucet. You could take them into the shower, under a hose. But when you do water them, you'll notice that they turn less of a silvery blue color and more of like a bright green. And that's because those specialized cells on the leaves that are meant to take up moisture are saturated and they're actually taking up their water that way. So it's actually really cool. Same thing with nutrients. Most of the Tillandsia that I'm familiar with, they get their nutrients from like dust particles on the air. So same thing, they've got specialized cells on their leaves actually that take them up that way. But there's lots of different types of Tillandsia air plants. I know a lot of people are more familiar with the ones that are like this big and brightly colored, but there's, oh my gosh, there's hundreds of them, and we have a lot of them right now because we got some 2 weeks ago, I think it was. But I just wanted to show those off because I do really, really love the Tillandsia. Again, if you're familiar with how I've spoken about bromeliads, you'll know that I just really like the look of these guys. Just like spiky, kind of plasticky look is like, I don't know, I just think it's really cool. So I wanted to show those off. Oh, and the light. So they do like bright light. I actually have some at home that are sitting in some direct sun, so I know they can handle it. But they're not gonna want like full, harsh, all day sun. The ones that I have get a couple of hours of sun about midday, and they're happy with that. And they would like humidity too, because they are like coastal plants. So pretty easy. Oh, one more thing actually. If you notice, a lot of them have got like a cup shape to them. You can really see down in there, they've got lots of space in between their leaves. Bromeliads, this is where they differ from bromeliads. Bromeliads love to have water in between their leaves. Tillandsia, air plants do not. That's how you get them to rot. So basically when we water them, we'll take the big ones, we'll dunk them in a cup of water, and then take them out and kind of shake them like this. So they get all of the moisture droplets out from in between their leaves so it doesn't grow bacteria and rot there. Little tip. I think that's how a lot of people lose their air plants actually, is that they get moisture trapped in between the leaves and they rot that way. Okay. Another one that I really like, we're gonna go through the ones that I like first, sorry. The very first time I did one of these classes, I brought a type of anthurium. I have two more types of anthurium. If you weren't there for the first class, anthurium, a lot of people recognize anthurium as the flamingo lily that has like the really brightly colored flower. These guys obviously do not look like that, but they are foliage type anthuriums, which means they do have a flower. Actually, this one I believe is starting to grow one here. It doesn't really look like much. However, they get like super cool leaves. So this is Anthurium superbum. It's got like long, waxy covered leaves, and then they've got like a purple undertone to them. You can kind of see it there. And then this is Anthurium cobra. They're both foliage types. Like I said, they will get flowers, but they're known more for their really attractive, ginormous leaves. There's also Anthurium hookerii, which is another type of jungle anthurium. Jungle anthurium is like a catch-all term for the foliage type anthuriums. So I've spoken before about them, but anthuriums are epiphytic plants, which basically means they use their big, strong roots there to grab onto trees in the wild. So they're actually not like ground dwelling. They're more of like, I grab onto the tree and I get my moisture that way. So keeping that in mind, all of the anthuriums are ones that are going to want a chunky mix. We've talked about that before with like philodendron, bromeliads, Chinese evergreens. A lot of the stuff we have in the greenhouse likes to have like a chunky mixture. So you want a well-draining, you want a potting mix, something that's made for potting, not planting, because planting mixes are usually denser. And then what they're really, really gonna love, if you can, is to add in some bark, perhaps some charcoal, some perlite, something like that to break up the texture because they want a lot of air around their roots. They really, really like that. That's how you're gonna get a happy anthurium. Another thing that they really enjoy, I have the hookerii, so not one of these, at home, and it loves to have morning sun. Not afternoon sun, they'll burn that way, but it has maybe like an hour or two of morning sun and then like bright, medium to bright light throughout the rest of the day. It loves that. It pushes out a new leaf like once every month or so. They do like humidity, but they're not as demanding as some of the other humidity loving plants like alocasia. They're going to be a little bit more sturdy. If you can't offer them, I know we just had like a super dry winter here. It was awful. I'm hoping we're coming out of that soon. Um, but they are not going to suffer the way that some other humidity loving plants would. Although they would appreciate it if you were able to give it to them with like a humidifier or something. So bright light, humidity if you can. I like to water mine at home when like the top half of the soil is dry. I just kind of like do like one of these, take my finger out. If it's wet, don't water it. If it's dry, give it a little bit of water, enough to drain out the bottom. Like we've talked about before, when you water your plants, you really want to saturate that soil. You don't want to give it just like a little like, teaspoon. Yeah, so that is the anthuriums. Oh, one more thing about them actually. So we've actually just done this with some of the ones that have flowers. But if you've ever seen, they're made for orchids and bromeliads and anthuriums. It's like a wooden like box kind of cage like thing. We sell them here. I don't know where else you could get them from, but we sell them here for sure. And I just have put some together. They can be planted in that because they like the air around their roots. You can get some like sphagnum moss, which is a commonly used medium for growing orchids. Take them out of the soil, put them into the little like wooden cage, and then you can like hang them up. It looks super, super cool. You can hang them on their side that way. It looks more like this is what an anthurium looks like in its natural environment. Very cool project to do if you were interested. They don't need it, but it's very cool looking. And we do have some in our store if I haven't described that very well. If you wanted to come have a look, we've got them hanging up over our orchid table. Okay. I'm actually just going to go right into this. So I have 4 plants here, 5-ish, that, let me make sure that you can see these. They don't look like much as they are right now. However, I want to tell you about how they look when they're mature. So I have 4 plants here. I have Cebu Blue Pothos. I have Epipremnum albo. I have Baltic Blue Pothos. And I have Amedrium medium silver, or sorry, Spider-Man. So these guys, you're probably like, okay, that's kind of boring. However, if you are familiar with Monstera and like the way that their leaves get, the holes in the leaves, that's called fenestration. All of these guys will get that. It's super, super cool. I've got some pictures here to show them off. So this guy, Baltic Blue Pothos, actually have one of these at home, and it started to climb on the wall. It's super, super cool. He will end up looking like that. Very, very awesome. Sometimes you can kind of see, oh no, it doesn't have any. Oh yeah, it does. Sometimes when they're like half ready to do it, they'll do it only on one side, which is actually really, really cute in my opinion. So they get a fenestrated leaf. It looks like that. The Cebu Blue Pothos has got like a lighter color. It's gonna get the same shape, but it's gonna be more of like a silver leaf. Very, very, very cool. We have had them this size in the greenhouse before. Unfortunately, we only have the 4-inch right now. But I wanted to show that off because they look, I mean, they are gorgeous. When the leaves catch the light, it's amazing. This is another one that I have at home growing on my wall. And this is the Epipremnum albo. So if you're familiar with the not Thai constellation, the Monstera albo, you know that the albo means that it's got white variegation on it. So that's where it gets that part of its name. And then similar to the other ones, it's going to get a really, really beautiful fenestration on the leaf. It's going to get those holes. But coupled with the bright white variegation, it really, really is pretty. And then the last one, the Amedrium medium Spider-Man, gets like this. And this is my current favorite of the bunch. It's got a little bit of a wider leaf like the Monstera does, as opposed to these 3, which are kind of like a skinnier, narrower leaf. This guy will get like a big wide leaf with those fenestrated holes in it. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about like why they do that. They are known to do that fenestration when they start to climb, right? So if you get one of these, or if you have one of these at home, and you're like, it's not really doing it, I don't understand why, give it something to climb on. That's what mine do, okay? These 2 guys started climbing on my wall, and it's great. And they, you know, they're all over my wall, but they're fenestrated, which is really, really cool. I don't know the actual like scientific reason why they do that. I've heard some people say it's because when they climb in nature, they've got to have the holes in the leaves so they don't catch the wind and blow themselves off the tree. I've heard some people say it's to help the light filter down through the leaves. Not exactly sure why, but I do know that they're more tempted to grow those beautiful fenestrations if they're climbing. And you kind of saw in the pictures that I have that they're all on like trellises. So that's when you're going to get them to do it. They are beautiful plants otherwise. I mean, if you like pothos, you're going to like these guys. But if you want them to actually get the fenestration, they've got to start climbing. Another thing about them is we've talked about philodendron before and how they really like a well-draining soil. Same thing for all of these. Actually, you can kind of see it in the amedrium. It's got, the growers have planted it in like a really like barky, texturous soil. It's because what they like. Can't really do much about it. If you try to force them to grow in a soil that they don't like, you're both going to be unhappy, So it's good to give them what's happiest for them and what helps them grow the most. They are tropicals. They do like rainforest type situations, so they do like to be watered frequently, but again, they're not going to do very well if they're in like a heavy soil. So something well draining so that when you do water them, they're not going to get waterlogged and have wet feet, which is what a lot of people call it when they get kind of soggy. They do all like bright light, so medium to bright light. They're going to grow best for you in like a bright indirect light. Pothos in general prefer not to have too much direct sun. Inside the house, it's hard to get too much like overbearing amounts of direct sun. I know sometimes people put their plants outside, and in that case, they get really scorched. But the pothos and philodendron in those categories can take like some morning sun, maybe some midday sun. By the end of the day, it's going to get a little too harsh for them. But like a medium to bright light is what's best for them consistently. They are heavy feeders, so they do want to have a frequent feeding schedule in their growing season. So mid-spring, like around late April, early May, through the summer. You do want to be feeding them like once every like week and a half to 2 weeks or so, maybe once a week, depending on like how well they're growing. But that's just going to help them maintain their green leaves, especially the darker leaf varieties. Sometimes they can get a little bit yellowy when they're nutrient deficient. That's a good indication that they just need a little bit of a boost of fertilizer. So that's them. Oh, and they're all, if I didn't make that clear, they are all vine plants, so they're not going to grow upwards on their own. They will trail over, like I said, but they're not going to appreciate you expecting them to grow upright because they won't do it. They're vines.
Savannah, do you have the prices on those? We got a question asking about the pricing for the yeah. It's fine if you don't. I know a lot of times we pull the stickers off.
I do pull the stickers off because I think they're unattractive, but
yeah, I know. Yeah, for everybody who watches this, if you never see a price tag when we're doing these classes, it's because we usually pull them. So
it's because I think they're ugly. I don't want to look at them.
No.
Which one was it?
Just in general. I don't know if there's like a.
In general, these 4 that I'm looking at right here are all in the range of like 20 to 30.
Okay.
Dollars.
All right.
I can't give you exact prices because
that's fine. Yeah, this is the one time our
yeah.
Very
and I have the list too. I took off all the prices and I put them on a paper and I don't know where it went.
No, you're good. Yeah, if you're curious, follow up with us after. Feel free to call the store and we can get you specific info. We just have, when we do visuals like this, it's people are sticklers. We remove our price tags so that they're not little white bits of paper.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Thanks, Savannah.
No problem. So now I have this is a spring cactus, Rhiphidophora. Rhipsalandopsis. Sorry, Rhiphidophora is someone else. Rhipsalandopsis, spring cactus, also sometimes called Easter cactus. They are, if you're familiar with the Christmas cactus or the Thanksgiving cactus, they're in the same family. However, these ones, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, I think that of the 3, Christmas cactus, Thanksgiving cactus, and spring cactus, this one is the cutest. The reason is because instead of having the spiky leaves that the Christmas and Thanksgiving cactus do, this guy has like, kind of looks like a puntia, the paddle cactus, like the shape of them. Really cute. They've got a different size flower, not size, sorry, a different shaped flower too, which I think is a little bit cuter. The Christmas and Thanksgiving cactus have flowers that kind of like arch. I don't know how to describe it, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. They kind of like arch outwards as opposed to the spring cactus that are like up and bright and happy. They come in lots of different colors, yellow, orange, red, pink. There's like a darker pink too. They do technically, like they're supposed to bloom around this time of year, and the growers that grow them do force them to bloom this time of year. However, I've heard lots of reports of people getting them, like they just randomly start blooming like in the middle of September. Just what they do, you know. We have to remember with all of the flowering plants, orchids included, all of the Ripsalinopsis, the anthuriums, this is not where they're from. They're not from here, right? So you can try and replicate the conditions that they're used to as best you can, but sometimes they just don't want, sometimes they're just like, okay, I'm gonna flower now. Sometimes they're like, I don't want to flower yet, and there's not really much you can do about it. But these guys are supposed to be flowering this time of year. But it's a nice little surprise when they show you some flowers, you know, November, December, you know, just happens. For the care of them, they do like really bright lights. You'll notice, this one doesn't have it, but you'll notice if you have one of these or their other varieties, the Christmas and Thanksgiving cactus, that if they're getting too much, they'll get what's called sun stress. It's a lot scarier than it sounds. It's just where they get like a purplish tint to their leaves instead of like a bright green. It doesn't cause them a whole lot of harm, but it is a good indication they're getting a little too much sun. So they would prefer to have like a bright indirect light with some direct sun, maybe in the midday. If you're getting up to like 4 to 5 hours of direct sun, you'll probably hit that threshold for the purple leaves, the sun stress. But that's how you're gonna get your good flowers on them, is you get them a good light. They're probably not gonna flower in lower light conditions, unfortunately. For the watering conditions, I think the first time we did one of these, I had Kalanchoe or Kalandiva on, and I mentioned how succulents that flower, cactus and succulents that flower, when they're in their just foliage stage, which means when they're not flowering, they're going to want to be treated like a succulent or cactus. So let them dry out in between waterings fully. Careful not to overwater them. However, when they are flowering, so like right now, you want to make sure that you're keeping it moist enough to where it never gets like halfway dry down the pot. And the reason for that is because when plants like this, well, I won't make a broad statement, but like plants like this, when they get too dry, the first thing to go is going to be the flowers, right? Because they don't need that. They doesn't perform any like life-saving function for the plant. So when they're stressed from not enough water, they're going to say, okay, I'm going to ditch these flowers. So I'm not providing any energy to that, and I'm conserving my energy just to keep, you know, my leaves alive. So when they're in their flowering stage, you do want to make sure that you don't ever give them like a drought like you would for a succulent that's like just plain green. I have heard people say that they are heavy feeders as well, so I will go ahead and point that out. It looks really pretty right there. They do like a good fertilizer, so they will take a cactus and succulent fertilizer when they're in their blooming season, and then just during their growing season, which is going to be like spring and summer. They would appreciate that. They are an arching plant. So I have seen some older spring cactus and Christmas and Thanksgiving cactus that I've seen some that are like 50, 60 years old. And one thing that always happens to them is they get kind of like arched and spread out. And that's good, that's what they do. But you'll find that the best way to keep them from breaking, because when they get so long like that, they get heavy, right? And it starts to cause stress on the joints. You can kind of see, yeah, they've got like a joint right there. When they start to arch over, if you've never trimmed them, it will cause some stress there, and they're likely to break off. So every couple of years or so, if they've had good growth, assuming they've had good growth, it's good to like pinch off at the ends of the branches so they are kind of just to encourage them to branch out more as opposed to just growing like straight outwards. If I were to pinch this guy off right here, then it's likely that it's going to produce 2 branches there. And it just helps evenly distribute the weight and keep them kind of compact as opposed to getting really long and heavy on the ends. So that's them about the spring cactus. If you're familiar with how to care for the Christmas cactus, this one should be like a no-brainer for you. But I do like to point this one out every time we come around to spring because a lot of people think about the Christmas cactus and then they forget that it has a cute little cousin that is also very fun to grow. So I wanted to show that one. Who do I have left? Okay. So this is Clusia princess, also sometimes called autograph tree or autograph plants. They are a new addition for us. We haven't seen her in a couple of years. I think the last time we had Clusia was like right after I started working here, and then I haven't seen them in a while. So these guys are fun. They are autograph tree, so they are like a little tree. It gets that name, sorry, a little bit of a sidebar. It gets that name because you can like scratch the leaves. Like you could put your initials into the leaf, you could autograph the plant and it'll like stay there forever. But it is called autograph tree because it does grow tree shaped. You can like prune them back and make them a cute little bush. I've seen people grow them similarly to like ficus shaped, stuff like that. They do like full sun, so they're going to want like a really bright light with some sun during the day. They can take a partial shade, but they're really going to grow best in like a bright light with mostly direct sun. They do like a well-draining soil, just like most of the stuff we've talked about today and I've talked about before in the past. Well-draining soil. You really don't want to waterlog any of these plants. So something that's heavy in perlite, maybe a little bit of bark in there. It is recommended every now and then to pinch these guys back. They will self-branch. I don't know if you can, is that easy to see? I don't know. Like right there, it's branching off on the side, and then on the other side, it's doing it too. But you do want to like pinch them back every like 3 years or so on the ends of the branches, just to make it more of a well-rounded shape. It's going to be more attractive in the long run. Or if you like the wild shape, you can do what you want. But for like a more manicured shape, you do want to pinch back the branches every couple years or so. They do like to be watered frequently. This guy is a little bit dry, and this is about the point where I would water it again. I'm tempted to take it. Yeah, you can kind of see that's where the water is, right? You can see the difference in color. That's a good indication when it's about an inch or so dry on the pot that it's time to water it again. I can tell really by the weight too that it's like super light. These do get a flower too, which I found out this morning. I did not know that. They get like a cute little pink or sometimes yellow flower once they've grown up a bit. I don't know if this size would flower, but if you had it for a couple of years and had it in good bright light, I would expect it to. Because they are a tree-shaped thing, they're going to appreciate a good amount of fertilizer. So again, during the growing season, same thing with the pothos, same thing with the spring cactus. When they're growing, I would give them like a all-purpose houseplant fertilizer. Jack's is a really good brand. I don't know if I've talked about that before. I personally use Miracle Grow and have no problem with it. I know some people don't like it, but I use it. It works just fine for me. As long as it's an all-purpose fertilizer, would be good for this guy. Okay. All right. So this guy, this is a Balfour Aurelia. It's variegated as well. We have a giant one of these that's unvariegated in the greenhouse right now, but I could not bring that up. It's really impressive, but I just didn't want to drag it all the way up here. But this is the variegated variety. So if you've, we more commonly have in our greenhouse the Ming Aurelia, which is sometimes also called the Parsley Aurelia. It's a tree-like shape and it's got, well, parsley-shaped leaves all over it. This guy is interesting because it's well known, I think, but I just haven't seen it all that often. So Balfour Aurelia, they're going to want a bright light. They are a tree growing thing, so it's going to get taller, not going to get so much wider though. So like with age, it will expand a little bit just because with age, your leaves are getting bigger and your stems are getting bigger. That's just how it goes. But it's not going to get like super wide like your other, like Dracaenas will get really long leaves. Umbrella trees will get like really big and wide. These guys are going to be more growing up. Bright indirect lights. They're going to want maybe some direct sun, but they're not going to love like a whole lot of direct sun. So bright indirect lights with some sun. We had a little bit of a battle with the Japanese Aurelia over the winter, where we had issues with we could not figure out how to please them with the watering schedule. We figured it out, okay? So I can tell you that the Aurelias like to have their soil almost completely dry before you water them again. They do not, under any circumstances, want you to water them again when like the top half of the pot is still wet. You have to wait for it to dry down at least halfway before you water it again, or else it's going to start yellowing. It's going to start dropping those leaves. It's going to throw a big fit. I would come into work and it would be like, not this one, the Ming Aurelia would like drop half its leaves. It's like, what are you doing? It's because they do not like to be overwatered in any capacity, which is good for people that, you know, don't like to water all that often. They do want to be left to dry out. So keep that in mind. They don't ever want to be left to dry and then left dry. Okay, there's an important distinction there is when I say they want to dry out, I don't mean that they want to be dried completely and then just like left there for several weeks. You do have to kind of work yourself onto a schedule, and it's going to be different for everyone's houses. It's always different for every person because everyone's got different humidity levels in their house. Everyone's got different light in their house. Everyone's got different like heating. You know, some people like different temperatures in their house than others. So you'll have to figure out a schedule. But you do want to be careful not to let it get overly dry as well. It just wouldn't, they'll dry up basically. The leaves, I mean. So you want to find like a little happy balance. We found that in our greenhouse, I think. We usually let them get dry for about a week before we water them again. But keep in mind that it is like super hot in our greenhouse, especially now going into spring. It is so hot. I'll go outside and it's like chilly and I'm like shivering, and then I'll go back inside and I'm like overheating and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've got a fever. So yeah, they're super cool. The only thing that I would really push to like pay attention to is the watering, but once you've got that down, once you figure out your schedule, they're gorgeous plants. They grow really, really pretty.
Savannah, can you answer? We had a question about how tall the autograph tree gets that came in once you started this new plant. How tall?
Yeah.
How tall does that get?
So I actually don't have like a specific answer on that. I have seen most commonly I've seen pictures of people who have them at around like 3 to 4 feet tall. I am sure that they can get bigger, but that's usually I think they're known to be kind of a slow grower.
Okay,
So
low growing,
yeah.
3 to 4 feet is
Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
I'm sure they can get taller, but that's usually where people like to keep them trimmed at.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is the last one that I have, although, yeah, I think this is the last one that I have. So this is Fatsia japonica spider's web. And it is a new thing for me. I don't think I've ever seen these before in the greenhouse. I know that some places use them in landscaping, but I've recently noticed a lot of people, it's been a little bit trendy to grow these inside as well, which is super cool. I think they're like really interesting. They look kind of like hands. So I did have to read up on them when we got them in. From what I have read, they do like just like everything else. I sound like a broken record, but well-draining soil, water before they get completely dry, water them when they're about a third of the pot dried down. You can't even see them. Okay. Water like a third of the pot. Once a third of the pot is dry, water it again. They do not like direct sun, I read. They do prefer to have like partial to full shade, which is good. Most people have that in their house. So like a bright indirect light, maybe like a medium indirect light. I don't think they would do very well in a low light. Most plants that have like variegation on the leaves, especially a white variegation, that's a good indication that it doesn't love like super low light. There are like exceptions. So like a lot of Dracaena, Chinese evergreens can tolerate low light even if they do have variegation. But things like pothos, philodendron, this guy, the Japanese, or not Japanese Aurelia, Balfour Aurelia, if you see like a white variegation on the leaf, it's usually a good indication that it's not going to be super happy in low lights. So I would say like a medium to bright indirect light for this guy. No direct sun unless it's like super early morning or like only for 30 minutes or so. And they do grow like bushy. They will get a little bit taller, and you can kind of, yeah, you can kind of see it there. But they're going to be more of like a bushy shape. So similar shaped to, again, Chinese evergreens, um, a young Dracaena, although Dracaenas get tall, but they're going to be like this kind of shape. But super cool. If you were to fertilize this guy, I would start out with like an all-purpose fertilizer at half dose, just to be on the safe side. But from what I've read, they can take a fertilizer no problem. There we go. But yeah, super cool. I just wanted to show this guy off because it's brand new to us. I had never seen one of these before, and I thought they were really fun. So that's new for us, new for you guys too, I hope. Um, okay, I see that I'm kind of moving fast. I can go back and talk about anything if anyone wants me to, or I've got another thing here that I forgot to talk about. This is in the same like group as the Cebu blue, the Baltic blue, the Emydrium. This is Rhaphidophora. This is the one that I mistook the other one for. Rhaphidophora decursiva. Decursiva? Decursa? Decursiva, I think. Sounds about right. It is in the same family as Tetrasperma, Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, which is the mini monstera. If you're familiar with that, it's commonly mistaken for a Swiss cheese plant, but it's different. But these ones are really, really cool because same with the other four that I showed you that get a fenestration when they're mature. This one, I'm trying not to spill soil everywhere, sorry. So when it's young, it's got these plain leaves. However, when it starts to grow up, it gets these like really, really cool split leaves here. Not really something that you see in other, I think it's really fun because different species, even though they all get fenestration, like these pothos, the epipremnum, the emydrium, the rhaphidophora, even though they all fenestrate, like some of them just have like different, like just so different looking fenestrations. I think it's so cool. These guys, when they're really, really old, sorry, I don't have a picture, but when they get really old, their leaves will get so big and so fenestrated, they almost look like palms because of the way that they're just like, so really pretty stuff. I have read that these guys, and I have experienced this actually firsthand, that they do need to climb. When they are left to kind of trail over the sides, they'll get kind of like spindly and not super attractive looking. So they do need to climb. Super easy to give them just like stick a pole in there and give them something to climb on. You can get like super into it. See, that's the thing, is that like you can get like a moss pole or like a trellis. You can get those like hooks that stick into the wall. You could just give it like a plain wooden pole that costs like $3 and say I'm done with it. There's a lot of different ways to support your plants. Just wanted to throw that out there. Like there's ways to fit it into your home and make it look like it belongs there. So super cool. Again, they do need to climb. Similar to other like vining, like pothos and philodendron, the Rhaphidophora does like a well-draining soil. They're going to appreciate a frequent fertilizer in their growing season. And they are going to appreciate like a medium, like at the lowest possible, a medium indirect light. But at the best case scenario, like a bright light with maybe some morning or midday sun. But yeah, I just wanted to, I'm very interested in like the plants that get fenestration when they're older because it's like a little surprise. Like I think I mentioned that I have this one at home. And I knew it was going to do this because I had read about it. But mine at home, the first time it showed me a leaf that was fenestrated, it was like very rewarding to me. So I really love these plants that like give you fenestration when they start to grow older because it's like, wow, I raised you and now you're rewarding me. It's very fun. Anyway, so that is all of the plants that I have to talk about. I can go back and answer questions about them if I didn't explain it well enough, or we can answer other questions.
Yeah, we have some questions in. Anybody who has questions, please feel free to submit them now. I'm going to start with a quick one, Savannah. We've had some requests to know when you're in the store for if people want to consult with you. Can you tell people kind of, do you have general hours that you keep? I can never remember which days you're on and off.
So I think I mentioned this last time. I think this was a question last time too.
Yeah.
I am currently balancing a work and school schedule. I'm full-time at in VCC college and here. So my schedule is a little bit all over the place. I do try to work morning shifts, so I'll usually be here around like, well, I'll be here when we open usually, when I am here. And then I usually leave around 4 to 5 p.m. So my typical schedule at the moment is like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
Okay.
but it could change, you know. It could
I would
change at any
recommend to
moment.
anybody, if you want to talk to Savannah specifically, which of course we're always happy with that, just call ahead if you're not sure and just
Yeah,
see
call
who's
ahead
going to be in.
for sure.
Yeah.
I'm always available to talk on the phone as well. At our store. Obviously, I'm not going to give you my phone number, but if you call the store and you say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to Savannah about this and this," they're able to, you know, find me and put me on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I know we get requests for that. So, and we just had one today. All right. Here's our first question. Can you, going back to air plants, can we talk a little bit about different ways you can display them? The question is coming from someone who's giving one as a gift and they're trying to
Yes.
figure out how to present it. So can we talk a little bit about that?
So there's a couple of different ways. There are some that are more popular than others. As a gift, you do want to kind of dress them up a little bit, but I will say for anyone who is interested, we do just display ours in the greenhouse, just kind of like on a table, right? As long as you're picking them up and like flipping them over every now and then so they don't have a side that's getting like rubbed against the table, they are fine just living like that. However, I understand that's not like super attractive. It's not a great like look. So a couple ways that you can dress them up is you can get yourself a piece of wood, and because they are not, because they do this in the wild, they grab onto the wood with their roots. You can actually get some plant-safe super glue. We have it at our store in our Tillandsia section. You can get a piece of like driftwood. You can get like a branch. Well,
I love how huge that one is.
yeah, sorry. And you can just kind of like stick them on there. Depending on how creative you are, you can make some really nice looking arrangements. You can also, if you had like a branch that was perfectly shaped, they could even like just sit in there. We have one in our store that's like a tree branch that's got like a crest to it, and we don't do anything to secure the plants in there. We just kind of like stick them in and they sit there. I mean that's how they grow, right? So that's how they're going to be happiest. Other ways I've considered recently doing is if you get, I think it's called chicken wire. It's like that like wire that's got like hexagonal shapes in it. A lot of those holes are perfect shaped for the small tillandsia. So if you get like a little piece of it, maybe put it in like a wood frame, you can just like stick the ends of the tillandsia in there so they're like outward facing towards you, and that can look really pretty and like caught in the light, like in a window. Especially if you get like the ionanthas or the capitatas that have some natural color to them, or if they're flowering. That can look really nice. I've seen people hang them up with string, so like tying. Maybe I should pick up one of the smaller ones. Maybe that would be clever. You can like get some fishing line or some like string, tie it around like that part of the plant, hang them up that way. There's lots of different ways to display them. I think the most attractive is probably to dress them up with like a piece of driftwood or like a tree branch, because that's how they grow naturally, so it looks like their natural environment. But there's lots of ways to do that, just so long as you can. The most important thing to remember is that you do need to make sure that you can water them effectively. So making sure that they are in a place where you can either turn them over, shake them off, or like spray them with water to water them. But that's just a couple of ideas.
Yeah, we actually had someone respond and say they have a lot of them and they put some of them in little candlesticks or tea light holders,
Yeah,
which is
that's
actually similar to what I
that's
had
pretty
when I
cool.
had some. Yeah, I
That's
had little candle stands.
I've seen actually going back to I talked about when we had the anthurium, the little wooden crates. I should have brought one up. I'm sorry I don't have one. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's like you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But there are small wooden crates that are for teeny tiny orchids, but you could put an airplane in there too.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
hang
feel
them
like the
up.
sky's the limit. since
Yeah.
they're easy. Do you have a preference between spraying them and dunking them in water?
I personally prefer to dunk them in water because I think that it lasts a little bit longer. Especially in our climates where we don't have a whole lot of like all year humidity. Um, they prefer to have like a moist environment, and I feel like dunking them in water as opposed to spraying them with water just lasts a little bit longer. If you spray them with water, you probably have to do it every like I usually tell people to start off doing it on every like 3 days or so and increase or decrease depending on how the plant is reacting to that schedule. Whereas dunking them in water, you can usually get away with every like 5 to 7 days. I also just think it looks a lot cooler because, like I said, when you wet them, they go from like that silvery color to like a like bright green. So dunking them in water just makes it's like really pretty, I think. So that's my personal preference. You just have to again, when you're spraying them, you don't have to worry about it as much. When you're dunking them, you do have to be concerned about making sure you turn the plant over for a little while, maybe like 30 seconds, shake it off, to make sure that it doesn't hold water in between its leaves and rot.
Okay, I was just wondering about that for purposes of display. If you have something that's hard to actually dunk in water. All
Mhm.
right, next question. Can you please recommend a well-draining potting soil I can pick up at the store to repot my indoor plants? Is there a best time of year or season to repot or a time of year that you should not repot?
Um, so that's a little bit of a hard question to answer. The second part of it. I can go back to the soils in a second. There's a lot of people will say, and to some degree, I agree that you should wait until spring to repot your plants because that's when they're going into their growing season. There's not really a good reason to repot a plant that is super like that it's in its like dormant state during the winter. That being said, a lot of houseplants don't get that full dormant state, if that makes sense, because they're not, I mean, they're in a house that is room temperature around. They're not getting that coolness that's going to like force that's going to give them like a dormancy period. So in theory, it is best to wait until spring because that's really when they're going to be growing. But I've repotted stuff in winter. We get repot requests in here in the winter. If it's a dire situation where the plant's like literally falling out of the pot and you're like, I don't know what to do, it can be done in the winter. But typically, as a rule, I do say like wait until spring just because that's when they're really giving that like spring push. But it can be done in the winter. I like I said, I do it sometimes just because I get bored and I'm like, I want to repot this plant now. And they live just fine. It's just that they're not going to have that full force of like growth hormones to recover from the stress of repotting if they're in their dormant state. The soils. So Pro Mix is a really good one. That is the potting mix that we use in the greenhouse to repot is Pro Mix. Pro Mix potting mix. It's got like a pink hydrangea on the front of the pack. It's a black bag with a pink hydrangea on the front. That is the one that we use in the store. I have personally used Fox Farms Ocean Forest. We do sell that here. It's a little bit pricier for like the quantity that you get, but I've heard lots of good things. It's got lots of good nutrients in it. Really good. It's usually packed with like perlite, little pieces of the bark, aged forest products, things like that. Good for houseplants. And then one that I know is like I've never used it, but I know that a lot of people swear by it is Espoma, the organic. It's a green bag. Espoma organic indoor outdoor potting soil is good as well. I just personally have never used it. If you wanted like a recommendation for what we use in our store, it's always the ProMix bag. We do sometimes add perlite in as necessary or like pieces of bark for like case by case basis. But typically ProMix is all we need. Like 75% of the plants that we pot at our store is just ProMix. It's a good mix.
Okay, that's great. I didn't know that. Um, okay, next. My angel wing begonias are leggy and lighter in color in my east and south facing windows, but they're doing well under my skylight. What would you say is their preferred light? I'd like to prune the leggy ones and help them become the beauties they can be. Any advice appreciated?
You said east and west
Yeah,
window?
they're not east and south. They're leggy
Yes.
and lighter in color, but under the skylight, they're doing great.
Hmm, interesting.
A dilemma.
That is something that I would recommend you call and talk about that because that's something that I would have to talk through with you. There's a couple of different reasons that that could be happening. Um, when I hear that a plant is getting like pale or discolored or yellow, I do automatically think that it might need some fertilizer, but if it's doing well under the skylight and recovering from that, that might not be your issue. Um, I would recommend calling and talking about that or bringing in a picture. That would be fantastic.
Pictures are always helpful.
Um, for the legginess, I have seen a lot of people report that it's an angel wing begonia, right? That's what they
Yes.
say? I've seen people report that they do need to be pinched back every now and then to maintain that nice, like presentable look that you expect from them. Sometimes when they're allowed to get too long or too big for too long without any pruning back, sometimes they can look a little leggy like that. It can also happen if they've like lost some leaves. So again, I know I mentioned that we just had like a really dry winter. If we have like a really dry spell, I do know the angel wing begonias do like a fair amount of humidity. So if you start to lose leaves, it'll look leggy really fast. So keeping up the humidity is important. If it was in a, sorry, east and south facing window,
East and south facing windows are where it's struggling.
mm, that's really hard for me to say because depending on how much light is coming in through the skylight, it could have been too much light. It would just be, I would recommend bringing a plant in or a picture or calling us so I can have like a direct conversation about that because there's lots of different factors.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we encourage you. Please feel free. Call, bring a pictures are always highly recommended if you can't bring the plant itself.
Because I mean,
Um,
I don't know if you've noticed, but this whole time, every time I try to describe something that's not right in front of me, it's so hard for me to like to transfer that information. So it's really good for bring in pictures or the plant itself so I can really like see what's happening. Because a lot of times someone will describe something to you like, oh, my plant's doing this and this, and I'll receive that a certain way, and it's not what you were intending to tell me. So pictures are always best.
Definitely. Yeah, I know. I send pictures to David Yost all the time. All right, let's see. Next question. I find it okay, hard to be able to hang plants. Do we carry like ropes or cable or fish line or anything that you use to hang plants at the greenhouse?
We carry the macrame hangers, which is like
Okay.
the woven hangers. We do carry lots of hooks. We don't have, as far as I know, we don't have anything that's like, is this for hanging like potted plants?
That's
I
what I'm
didn't
not
think
sure if it's to hang like a potted plant or to hang like plants, like if you have like a tillandsia or something
it-
you want to hang. There's a lot of different
I do
ways
think that we
to,
carry like
you
string.
said potted
Like,
plants. Oh, so like more like a hanging basket
oh,
type
okay.
of
So
thing.
you wouldn't want to hang it with just like yarn, because we do carry like
Yeah, no, we need something a little heftier than
yeah.
that.
For that case, all that we carry that I can think of off the top of my head for like hanging plants is the macrame hangers.
Okay.
We do have like the plastic hangers that you can clip onto the side of the pot. There's a couple different varieties, but a lot of them were just like they've got like little pinchies and they're like three prongs and they just like grab onto the side.
Yeah.
As long as your pot has a lip like this, a lot of ceramic pots do too, like terracotta does as well. But as long as your pot has a lip, we have several different variations of like a little clip that'll grab on there and hold it up. Um, but that's the options that we have for
That
that.
sounds good. It may be good depending on what you're looking for, because I don't know specifically to maybe talk with our like annuals team with their hanging baskets.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
might be good. They may have some ideas too, because they deal with large hanging baskets. All right, next question. Do you recommend a granular food fertilizer or a liquid added to the water, or does it depend?
Um, I personally don't see enough of a difference between because they're both concentrates. The distinction that I make between fertilizers is concentrates, so things that you have to add to water before you add them to the plant, and fertilizers that you can add directly onto the plant. The ones that you can add directly onto the plant are usually a little bit less strong because they're not concentrated, so they're not going to burn your roots, as opposed to a concentrate, the powder, the granular or the liquid concentrates that you add to water first. Personally, I don't think there's much of a difference for me to really say one way or the other, granular or water or liquid, because they're both concentrates. They're both going to be like the same kind of thing. I guess there's like a minute distinction where like the granulars, you do have to make sure that it's fully dissolved, whereas the liquid concentrates are already dissolved into a liquid, so you just kind of have to stir it a bit. Whereas the granulars, I think you have to make sure that your water is like room temperature so that it actually is able to dissolve into the water. But for the function of like being a healthy fertilizer for a plant, I haven't ever noticed the difference. At home, I use granular and liquid concentrates, and they do basically the same thing.
Okay.
The more important thing is to make sure that you have the correct NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, for the plant that you have.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Thanksgiving cactus. Okay, my Thanksgiving cactus leaves have dried out on the ends and are soft. Do you have any thoughts about watering or fresh soil? Or would you need a photo for that?
Oh,
Yeah.
so okay, dried out on the ends and soft. Are they also kind of wrinkly? Because those two things are telling me that it might not have enough moisture.
I don't know. If you can respond and let us know.
Yeah.
And
It's one of those things where I'm happy to give you as much advice here as I can, but again, there nothing beats like a being able to look at the plant itself.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I do know that I had someone recently bring in a Christmas cactus for me to look at, and it was super dry. Like
Yeah, that happens.
super
They get like
dry.
super wrinkly. I have one at my house
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
neglected a little bit.
yeah.
Um, Next question. We'll wait, see if he answers, but
Mm.
any attractive low light plants you can name off the top of your head, like for the top of a bookshelf in a living room that can handle very low light.
Very low light? What's very low light? Like,
I just have attractive and low light. So I can
okay.
handle, yeah.
Um, so attractive and low light. So the first thing that I always go to whenever I say when I hear low light is your like three really like basically bulletproof plants. So snake plant, ZZ plant, Dracaena. But for a top shelf,
Yeah.
the first two, the ZZ plant and the snake plant, are probably out of the question just because they're taller growing plants. If you had a younger Dracaenas are usually more compact and like round shaped than like younger snake plants are. So sometimes you can get away with having a Dracaena on like a top shelf. It because they've got long leaves, they kind of curl over a little bit. They kind of look like they're trailing down when they're young. There's lots of different Dracaenas out there, lemon lime, lime lights, Janet Craig, lots of different options for that. Of course, you have your two vine staples. So you have your pothos and philodendron, which recommended all the time for good reason. I mean, they're good for that purpose. They trail over the sides of their pots, so they would be really good for like a bookshelf. Um, in that case, I would stick with like if you have like super low light, like super low light, you do want to stick with like the darker leaf varieties. So the jade pothos, the heartleaf cordatum philodendron, the ones that are just plain green. Um, I have seen some people grow spider plants in super low light, and they get a little bit sparse, but they usually hold up pretty well. They're gonna have a similar shape to like the young Dracaenas, so it'd be kind of like a little like curl over the ends of your pot kind of situation. Um, it is a hard one. It's hard to recommend super low light plants without just saying the same five things every time. Um, but your best bet is going to be like Dracaena, pothos, philodendron, maybe spider plant, depending on how low light your low light is.
That makes sense. I actually have a pothos on my bookshelf in another
Yeah.
room.
I feel like everyone's got a pothos on their bookshelf.
Everybody has a pothos on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
Just a plain old green leaf. It's
Yeah.
great. It looks good. Okay, so we have more information here. The cactus leaves are not wrinkly. The color is good and it's blooming.
Okay.
It sounds like my mom had one where some of the leaves had died back a little bit, and we just pinched those ones off, and it seems to be doing fine. But I don't know anything about this, so
I would just pinch them back. Um, it depends on how long it's been going on for. Um, if it's a recent development since it started blooming, I would consider a fertilizer if you're not already. Sometimes older Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter cactus, if they're if they've been potted in the same pot for such a long time and then they start blooming, they've got no nutrients to continue to support the plant. So I would try that. If you haven't, I would go ahead, like Sally said, and just kind of pinch off those leaves that aren't doing well and see if the problem continues or if it maybe was just like a little like, ah, and then it settled out. You know, sometimes plants do that. Sometimes they're like, oh gosh, something bad happened, and then it settles itself out, fixes itself. Um, that's interesting. The leaves are like weak and browning on the ends. Could be too dry, like in the air. Um, could be scorched, but if it's a new development and you haven't moved it, it wouldn't be scorched, in my opinion. Um, I still would recommend bringing a picture of the plants in for me to see. Hard to diagnose without really seeing what it looks like. But yeah.
Thank you. All right, we'll go. So, happy first day of spring to you all too. We got a nice message. All right, it is 1 o'clock on the dot, so we will call that. We've got all of our questions in. Savannah, thank you so much. As always, this is always this fun class. I always love seeing all
Yes,
the
thank you
house
for
plants.
doing
I'd like take notes and then have get plant envy. But all right, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact myself. Feel free to call the store, contact Savannah, go in and see her. She'd be happy to see you. If you shop at another store, we have great people at all 3 of our greenhouses who'd be
Oh
happy to
yeah.
as
Oh yeah,
well.
we have a really good team of people in all 3 of our greenhouses.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so Savannah, do you want to wrap up with anything before we close for the day?
um nothing specific, just kind of the same thing you said. You know, I'm always here except for when I'm not. So if you come in with questions, I'd be happy to help you out. And always feel free to call and see if we have something you're looking for. We might.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Bye, Savannah.
Bye.